Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. For today's episode, I am joined by two of the members of Bozeman Tenants United, Marcos Silva, Zack Ehrhardt. How are y'all doing today? Thank you for being on the show.
Doing pretty well, Desmond. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Doing well myself. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for both for coming on. This is a conversation that I've been wanting to have quite a bit over the not even just this past year, but for the last couple of years. The housing crisis, is affecting people all over the country. But obviously, as Montanans, we want to talk about what's happening here in our own state. Before we get into the specifics about what exactly is Bozeman Tenants United, why it's being started, so on and so forth, can you just break down for people what exactly is a tenants union and why do you think the people of Bozeman need one?
Well, I think a tenants union can be thought of in a lot of ways as very similar to a labor union. The concept in a labor union being that a group of workers in a workplace have greater leverage, they have greater power, they have shared interest in their identity as workers. I think a tenants union is much the same thing. We as tenants have a shared interest in having our city be livable, having the city be affordable, having people who work and live in our communities be able to stay there and not be forced out. So that's kind of the general idea, I guess, without getting into too many details.
Right. And Zack, I want to ask this next question to you. When it comes to the housing crisis specifically in Bozeman, how has it been unfolding the last few years? And can you speak to how that has led y'all to starting the tenants union?
Yeah, most certainly. I moved to Bozeman in 2015. Rent was pretty inexpensive then, but gradually, with COVID and just the increase of, what am I trying to say here? Virtual work, more people are moving out to Bozeman, but the causing the price and cost of housing to go up. And just so many of the local workers here have just been continually priced out. Most places here in Bozeman are desperately looking for service work and just that kind of industry, whereas the rest of us are really just feeling the heat of rent, effectively doubling in just the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's been out of control watching the prices go up here in Missoula. And I feel as though every time I look over, it seems as though the prices in Bozeman happen to be even higher than they are here in Missoula. So I'm completely baffled by how people are, even able to survive in this current climate. But kind of going a little bit further here, talking about the tenants union specifically, how does that provide protection for people who are facing housing security? Like, how do you sell people on the premise of being involved with this?
Yeah, I think the thing that we're doing right now, given that we're just starting off as an organization, is we're focused on a campaign to ban short-term rentals in Bozeman. The reason why we're focusing on this is we believe that while the city remains unaffordable for the people who live and work here and make Bozeman what it is, there shouldn't be an explosion of these homes being bought up by whoever to turn them into vacation rentals. I think it's not just that we face a housing crisis here, but we face this kind of vicious cycle where the more Bozeman becomes unaffordable because it becomes more of a tourist destination, the worse a tourist destination it becomes, because no one's going to want to come to a city where, yeah, it's gorgeous and you've got ski resorts nearby, but every restaurant closes at 9 p.m. because no one who works in a restaurant can afford to live here. So we think that we have a pretty common sense solution in placing a temporary, if not permanent, ban on short-term rentals in the city right now, and people seem to really resonate with that. So that's our selling point right now. In the future, we're hoping to expand our services to, free legal representation for members in housing-related legal actions. We're looking to extend our services to things like collective action against the most egregious renters in the city who take advantage of people and don't provide them. Sometimes they're legally the rights that they are legally provided. I guess like their responsibility as a landlord.
Right.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to grow and to offer more and more and more as we have a bigger membership.
Now, as you were trying to, start out this process, building out a network, bringing people together, I know that you've also gone to certain like city commission meetings and, provided public comments. When you're hearing people's stories about what's happening in Bozeman, can you just give us a little feel for that? Like what is happening to some of the people who are living in Bozeman? Some of the personal stories you heard or you might have. Can you just share some of that with us?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, my personal experience has been I didn't get evicted per se, but my landlord just kind of up and decided right before signing my lease, would have been like 5 months ago, that she wasn't going to extend it for a full year, just 6 months, because she wanted her daughter to move in February. And just because Bozeman is such a college-based town, I was super worried about no housing being available in February, just because our what is it? Not absence rate, but
our vacancy rate.
Rate. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like effectively zero. It's like
Right.
fluctuates between 1% to 4%. So it's like, well, February not going to work. So I opted not to sign that lease and to find somewhere new. And like the options, even just in August, were not super great. I mean, right now I'm paying $1,000 for my room in a shared space of 3. And as like a social worker, I work at the warming center here in town. That's pretty pricey for providing what I would think is like a pretty necessary service for a town the size of Bozeman. And having gone also to one of those city commission meetings, just hearing similar stories over and over again of people just trying to find a place to live in the town that they work. Just incredibly heartbreaking. Because if you work in Bozeman, you deserve to live in Bozeman.
Right. How about yourself, Marcos? Have you heard of any stories particularly that have kind of brought this whole thing more to reality for you?
I mean, I personally had a really difficult time finding the place that I live in, but the story that has really stuck with me has been I work in healthcare here in Bozeman, and like everywhere else in the United States, Bozeman has a serious dearth of nurses. We need more healthcare workers in the community, and COVID didn't do any favors. And we face this twofold problem here in Bozeman where being a college town, we put out quite a few nurses every year. MSU graduates probably around 200, 230 every year through their traditional and accelerated nursing programs. But very few stay in the community because our local healthcare systems can't afford to pay them a wage commensurate to the cost of staying here. Right. So many of them find it just makes more financial sense to graduate and leave, whether they've lived here their entire lives or whether they moved here just for college and were hoping to stay before. And then more personally, working in healthcare, I had a coworker who she and her husband were staying in the university's graduate and family housing because her husband was a PhD student and she was a nurse at in healthcare in town, and they decided they wanted to have a family, and she got pregnant, and they were very happy and excited, and he was coming up on his graduation. And as they started to do the math, they realized it didn't make sense for them or more, it wasn't really going to work for them to expand their family and leave the more affordable family and graduate housing at the same time. It was a sort of one or the other cost could be taken, but not both at the same time. So in order for her to do what she and her husband, and I think many people want to do someday, is start a family, she and her husband had to leave town. They had to go back to another state where they were both from, and get family support in a place where it wouldn't just be completely unaffordable. And so that way, I lost a coworker, I lost a friend, we lost a young family, and we lost another nurse in the community.
Yeah. And you know what? It's hard to hear, but these are the stories that I've been hearing as well for a few years now, happening across the state as people are just struggling to find a way to live here. And so we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, I want to talk more about, the housing situation in Bozeman, and particularly how the local government has responded to your attempts to work with them. So everyone stay tuned. We'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back from the break, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us through this episode of Independent Thought. So before the break, we were talking about the different effects that we're having, that have been happening to people in the city of Bozeman due to the housing crisis. Now, since you've all organized and you've been trying to bring public comments in front of the city commission, the next obvious question I want to ask is, how has the city's government been receptive to your request for action? So, what have you gone to them with specifically as proposals, and how have you been met after they heard what you had to say?
Yeah. Really know that the Bozeman City Commission is thinking about our proposal, certainly a diet version of it, where they're really interested in the idea of banning type 3 Airbnbs, which are owner unoccupied, whereas we're looking to ban, short-term rentals rather, but we're looking to ban all 3 types. So type 1, type 2, and type 3.
Could you go into a little bit what the other 2
said,
types are really quickly?
Oh, yeah. So type 1 is completely owner occupied. So
Okay.
that's how Airbnb kind of originated, and short-term rentals kind of originated, is that there's an extra room in their house. They rent it out for like the weekend because there's like a convention or a concert in town, something like that. Type 2, partial owner occupation. They've got a condo up here that they only use for like skiing, and then in the summer they rent it out. And then type 3, the grossest of all of them is no owner occupancy. It's just a investment property for them, and they've just decided that they want to rent out to tourists instead of locals.
Okay. And when it comes to the city commission, they've basically only said that they were open to the 3rd option.
As of now, the way the government in the city of Bozeman works is that they conduct research and all the things that are brought forward for them, and that's how they end up making decisions on whether to pass some sort of ordinance about it. So right now, the city commission has agreed to consider researching a ban on type 3 rentals.
Okay.
We're looking to get them to, at this moment, agree to researching the effects of banning all 3 types of short-term rentals, as well as researching our proposal to use some of the city's existing affordable housing fund to subsidize type 1 rentals. Those are the owner occupants who rent out a room. This could be an older couple looking to make property tax payments or just face the higher cost of living. We would like the city to use the money it sets aside for affordable housing to subsidize those short-term rentals to become long-term rentals, because there is a gap in what you can make doing long and short-term rentals. So we don't want to price anyone who's been out, who's been living in Bozeman for a long time out just due to the cost of property taxes or cost of living. But we think that even a 4-month rental for someone who's just moved here, who is looking for something more long-term while they're in town, or a student who's just here for a semester, maybe a foreign exchange student. I think that those are infinitely better than a short-term rental, and we want to encourage people to switch them. But back to your original question, yeah, the city commission has started to think about part of our proposal, but it's not really wholly on board yet.
Let's talk about this a little bit more plainly here.
Yeah.
The price of housing is, for a lot of people, their number one issue, like across the board. I mean, you can't afford to think about anything else if you are unstable in your own home, right? And this crisis has hit Bozeman harder than any other part in the entire state. And so my question to you is, when you come to the city government and you're talking to them about, ideas that you're having, do you feel like it's actually being met with with a care, with a sense of like they actually care about this issue? Do they feel as though that they're, as interested in addressing housing insecurity as you are? Do you think that they are, trying their best to address this crisis? Does it feel as though you're actually being met with some sort of like, I want to work with you versus, I'm putting up a barrier and keeping you at bay? Like, what's the reception felt like to you?
Well, we have 5 people on the city commission, and so I can pretty confidently say we've got mixed responses. Some people are on our side, but maybe don't feel the urgency as much. Some people are wholly on our side, but maybe think we are coming to this from the wrong perspective. And some people are just plainly not on our side. And I think that we're kind of looking to capitalize on the fact that we only need 3 out of 5 commissioners to agree with us to have the city begin to initiate work on something. So we don't expect that we're going to win over every single city commissioner. We don't have to win over the entire city government. We just have to make a convincing enough argument that what they're doing is insufficient, and that not just us, but the entire city of Bozeman needs more urgent action to be taken. I think it's harder when you have folks who maybe feel some of the cost of living crisis, but aren't in that place where they are a renter looking to buy a home at some point, which tends to kind of overlap with who tends to be in city government is older, wealthier folks. They don't feel the squeeze as bad. They don't feel the urgency as badly. So we're here to kind of show them that the urgency is there. The need is there. What they're doing, even if they feel is the right move, doesn't address the problem of right now.
Yeah. I mean, let's call it what it is. If you're a homeowner, this situation isn't a crisis for you. It's a great thing, because you're seeing your personal wealth go up as your property values keep increasing, your equity keeps going up. And so it's a divide here. Homeowners probably love this climate while everyone else is struggling to just barely tread water, right? Yeah. And so I'm looking at this again from a state perspective. This isn't just happening in Bozeman. This is happening across Montana. In fact, it's happening across the United States, but we're just going to focus on our state here for a minute. Are you planning on keeping this Tenants United? Is this going to be just a Bozeman-centric thing, or do you plan on trying to expand this to being something that could be services provided to people throughout the state of Montana?
Yeah, no, most definitely. Right now, we are just focused on Bozeman as we kind of grow in membership and grow in power. But the intent is that, one day we will have different chapters, I guess, across most definitely all major Montana cities, but I would assume the rest of leadership would love to see assistance going out to even the small rural communities as well. It's a big goal of us to also, take on Montana state legislature as well, just because a lot of solutions are getting blocked by them. So it'd be great to have that collective power, statewide, to tell them, like, we as Montanans are suffering, and y'all need to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my final question for you here is, what exactly is the long-term plan for how Bozeman Tenants United plans to build, power / influence, within the city, and again, maybe even beyond that? And what can the people listening do to maybe like help out and get involved with what you're doing?
Yeah, our long-term plan is to focus on building people power, more people power, and more people power. We intend to, renters, tenants comprise 54% of the population of the city of Bozeman. And we intend to capture most, if not all of those people into our base, because we think that, like I said at the very beginning, as tenants, we have a shared interest. As tenants, we have shared experiences. And as tenants, we have a shared desire to be able to live in this city that is, some of us are from here, some of us moved here, but we're all here because we like it here. It's one of the easiest things you can do in Bozeman right now is leave Bozeman, because
Yeah.
it's not like the price is trying to keep you here. So we want people to be exercising their right to vote. We want people to be supporting one another in neighborhood mutual aid. We want people to be engaging with other local community groups and pushing influence that way. I think the more we can focus on our shared interest as tenants in this community, I think the more opportunities we'll find to expand our power and the benefits of a shared union like this. I think if people want to help us out, we would appreciate any and all support on our Patreon. You can find us on Patreon at Bozeman United. Donations right now from folks outside of the city of Bozeman, unfortunately, do not constitute as membership at this time because we are a Bozeman local, but those donations still go to things like printing flyers. We're setting up a town hall. We're going to need to be able to rent a space. We're going to need to be able to rent audio equipment. Everything that people, either our members contribute to or that our donors contribute to, doesn't go to any paid staff. It goes to either supporting people in need in Bozeman, tenants who are members, or it goes to the projects that we're working on. So yeah, reach out to us on Instagram as well. You can find us at Bozeman United on Instagram. And if you're looking to join a tenants union in Bozeman, reach out to us. We would love to find a place for you.
Perfect. Well, I think you stole my final question from me. I was going to ask you where people can find you at online. Are you only on Instagram, or is there somewhere else that people can get linked in with you?
I believe we're on Instagram, and we have
a TikTok.
We have a TikTok as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Gen Z.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right.
We're probably going to be setting up Facebook pages as well as other social media pages, but at the moment, yeah, we're sticking to Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. Twitter, we'll see how long that lasts before we sign up. But
well, let's be fair. Most people are on Instagram or TikTok these days, so you're hitting the two large demos there. Yeah. So Marcos, Zach, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really do appreciate it. For those who are interested, those links will be in the episode description. Make sure that you check out those pages, give them a follow. If you liked this episode, please go ahead and share it on social media, wherever you spend most of your time: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, wherever the case may be. Tag Independent Thought, tag Bozeman Tenants United. Thank you, everyone, for checking out this episode today. We will see you in the next one. All right, so we are doing another one of these little epilogues here. I'm not sure how many of these we will be doing here on Independent Thought, but had some fun with it last season. Thought we might try a couple more of these. I'm just kind of curious about what the next steps are for you guys. I know that we have like a local tenants union here in Missoula. I haven't gotten involved in what they're doing here, so I'm not sure exactly what the day-to-day looks like. What do the meetings look like? Like, how are you guys trying to figure out like what you're supposed to do next? Like, I've never been involved in one of these processes before. Can you kind of bring us into the picture a little bit?
Yeah, I can take that. I am part of our campaign team. So right now we are focused on this campaign, like I mentioned, and basically what we're doing next is we're kind of taking it step by step with the city commission. Like I mentioned on the main episode, the city needs to research something before they'll even think about voting on it. So we know we need to get them to agree to research on it. So what do? We're going to be holding a town hall where we have members talk to the city commissioners and really hammer home, hey, can you commit to this? To do that, we need to recruit folks to come. So we're engaging in phone banking, reaching out to people who have already signed our petition, or folks who have expressed interest on social media, people who've worked with us in the past. These kind of things basically start to come up, and you realize you can build out institutional opportunities to grow from them. Yeah, I think that's more or less how we're kind of going. And then we're also hoping, as we get bigger and as we kind of grow in our capacity, we can start to hand more and more decision-making power to members themselves. We're going to start holding tenants meetings, which will be member-wide meetings. Anyone who is a member is welcome to join. Anyone who's interested is welcome to come see what it's about. But we basically going to start holding votes on, hey, we have this situation coming up. Do we want to handle it A or B? Do we want to try something else? See what the people who are closest to the problem think about the possible solutions.
When you said that one piece earlier that you have to, get them to agree to research it.
Yeah.
That would just rub me the wrong fucking way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about like a large body of people here. Like it's 5 people. They all claim to live in the city. Like I don't live there, but I've been there enough over the years. The prices of housing at one point last year was like over $800,000. You have people living in campers. You have homeless people on your streets. You have people in tents. I mean, why would you need to compel them to research it? Like that feels like such a slap in the face. Maybe I'm projecting onto it here, but I couldn't imagine being given that response. Like, oh, like, well, you have to do a town hall to get us to agree to research it. You shouldn't even have to research it. How is it not already known what the problem is? Like that feels unbelievable to me. Am I out of bounds by feeling that way?
I don't think so.
No,
it's definitely frustrating for us.
I mean, yeah, it seems pretty obvious on our side that something has to be done. And I think the idea of researching, I understand, we're putting out ideas that maybe not everyone agrees with right off the bat, but I think that these are pretty common sense solutions that most people in Bozeman that we've approached have been pretty darn supportive of. So it does feel like there's a point where maybe you don't have to look into this before you decide, we should do something.
Right. And, I've heard similar things being said on the city council here in Missoula. Yeah. And it blew my mind every time. Like where people would bring up housing insecurity and someone on the city council would say, oh, well, we'll look into that. And I can't wrap my head around it, because in my mind, it should be the number one issue for not just for, like for your city, but for our city too. And if you're telling me that they also would claim that there's only so many things that they can do because the state legislature has put restrictions on them with like inclusionary zoning and so on and so forth. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, if you only have so many options and you're also telling me that you'll look into additional options, that tells me that with the few options you had, you didn't look into all of them. Yeah. And I can't even wrap my head around that.
I know.
So, let me ask you this, what are the challenges that you're currently facing, as far as maybe like recruiting more people or getting resources, like what is the biggest obstacles you're facing right now?
I think the biggest obstacle we're facing right now is getting people to believe, honestly, that better things are possible. I think in a lot of our lives, things kind of just are the way they are. And most folks who kind of see the way Bozeman is changing and the way Montana has been changing in general kind of just describe it to like, that's the way things are. Yeah. Or they come up with some sort of boogeyman that is self-defeating in that there's nothing they choose something to be upset about, something you can't really do anything about. Like, it's kind of a joke in town that like, oh, these darn Californians moving in are what's driving prices up so high. And
Right.
whether or not that is a major contributing factor to the cost of rising housing costs, the cost of the rising
Yeah.
cost of housing, that you can't, the city can't put a wall around, the city council can't put a wall around Bozeman that says no Californians allowed. So maybe let's start thinking about what we can do about that. Then just kind of sit around and be like, oh, it's
Yeah.
Californians
Just
moving in.
sitting on your hands and being like, oh, we can't
Yeah.
do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, yeah, people need to be convinced that we can do something about it. The city commission has the power to do things about it. And if, we're worried about the state legislature coming down on us, then we should be swinging for the fences. Like, why hold ourselves back if they're already just going to come down on us?
Yeah. Definitely something that I see is, this, I mean, it's a part of American culture is rugged individualism. So
Yeah.
a lot of these working class folks in town that are, experiencing this hardship are is like, well, what can I do?
Right.
And so they have a hard time seeing that if they join hands with the people next to them, that all these voices are so much more powerful than these rich investors that are buying up all the homes in town and the people in state and local government. It's really breaking this idea that you have to do it on your own and realizing that working together we can achieve so much. So I think it's just like that individual apathy.
Yeah, the apathy is something that I see all the time. And it's not even just for this one issue, it's for all issues. As somebody like for me doing a political podcast, I talk about issues that are happening to us all the time. And that is the number one, I think, hindrance for people is just that feeling of helplessness, right? Like what can I do? What am I supposed to do? Oh, that's just the way it is. Like, oh, well, I don't really know what to do. So I just don't think about it at all. It feels like people get so defeated before they even get started. And I don't blame them. It's a fair reaction. There is a monumental weight being put on people right now with all the different obstructions that we have to overcome just to live a decent life. So I totally get that. Just one final thing I want to ask y'all before we get out of here. I appreciate you staying extra for this time period here. When you envision what the end goal is here, what is it that you kind of hope this all comes? Well, what do you think? What do you hope comes to fruition from all of your efforts at the end of this organizing?
Do you mean for us personally as individuals or for the organization as a whole?
Both.
Okay. I know what I'm thinking. How about you, Zach?
Goodness. Personally, I want to see like communities that are really collectivist centrist, I guess, working together to provide like common safety and common good for their neighbors. I think that's just something that's maybe that we've never had, or at the very least have lost over these last few decades is all of us working together and being a community in whole. What about you?
Yeah. I would definitely echo that. I think a thing that people don't talk enough about, I think, with housing crises is that when someone moves away because they've been priced out of a city or a town, they're not just moving away. They are leaving behind a bunch of people who knew them, who were friends with them, who worked with them, who maybe grew up with them, went to school with them. And those are connections that even if we have things like Zoom now where we can stay in touch with people, but it's not the same. We can all admit it's not the same. So I would love, if Bozeman could be a city where you can grow, you can, whether you moved here or you grew up here, you can start a family, you can know your neighbors, you can, have your friends' kids know your kids, and that you can stay if you want to. I don't think Bozeman has to become, some dystopian village where, no one comes in, no one goes out, for us to be able to just be able to stay if you want. You don't literally have to be forced to leave. And what I hope Bozeman United can become to support that is just a political force that reminds the levers of power, the people who are in power, that without the people who live here, the people who, whether temporarily or permanently, the people who work in different places in town, Bozeman doesn't really exist. Bozeman isn't like a collection of buildings. It is the community, and so we need to focus on that.
Had to make sure I wrote down part of what you just said there, thinking about ways to clip little videos here for when we go to like promote this episode. Dystopian village where no one comes in, no one goes out. it really does feel like it's kind of becoming that. And it's unfortunate. I have lived in Missoula now since 2010. And over the course of living in Missoula, very similar stories. People who either lived here their whole lives or they came here for school to go to the University of Montana, had to leave because they couldn't afford to live in this city. Like, how many times do you have to hear this story again and again and again before someone addresses that problem, right? Like, people come here, they love this community, they want to invest in this community. The community doesn't allow them to invest, so they have to leave. It's a cycle that just needs to break at a certain point. And I don't think that the governments of our individual cities have been hearing us. So I think it's time for collective action to take place. So I appreciate what both of you are doing, what your organization is doing. So I want to send a thank you to everyone else who wasn't here today, who's also a part of Bozeman Tenants United, for all the work that you're all doing. And, again, for those who, want to get involved, make sure that you check out those links in the episode description. Follow them on Instagram, on TikTok. If you can support them on Patreon, please do so. And please share this episode with other people, whether you live in Montana or you don't, but especially if you live in Bozeman, please share this episode. Yeah. Marcos, Zack. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say one last thing before we head out. We talked about some wanting to start different chapters in different communities. If you're in the city in Montana, if you're in Helena, if you're in Billings, if you're in Great Falls, and you feel inspired to get something started in your own community, reach out to us. We would love to talk to people who are wanting to start something similar in a different town. So we might be small, but everyone's going to start somewhere.
Absolutely. Thank you all again for coming on the show today. I really do appreciate it. For everyone out there, thank you for listening to this episode. We will see you in the next one.